Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Only Podcast. Once again, this is Chris Vanini, your host, joined by Austin Smith, theonlycolors.com writer. Dom was not available again. He's got a lot going on, got back from vacation. But Austin and I had a good time last week, so I figured Austin would come back again. And how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. The game, it was certainly sobering, but outside of that, all is going pretty well. Hopefully, looking forward to a bounce back win here this week. But certainly a lot to cover after that humbling experience at home against Wisconsin.
That's probably a good way of putting it. I think a lot has changed perception-wise over the last week. Notre Dame is not nearly as good as anybody thought. MSU does not appear to be as good as we thought because of the Notre Dame game. And Wisconsin might actually be really good team. And that Wisconsin-Michigan game this week will be really interesting.
Agree.
But reminder, guys, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the new RSS on iTunes or whatever your feed is. We've now got it on SoundCloud. Runs a lot smoother. Make sure you're following The Only Colors on Twitter. I'm at Chris Vanini. He's at AC Smith 06.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And he's got Austin writes previews. Got some stuff going up on the site to preview the Old Brass Spittoon game.
Yes, sir.
But before that, so this Wisconsin game, 30-6. A lot of different ways to look at it. Things that stand out. For me, two things take away from that game. The first is they kind of play into each other. The first is that the quarterback play was incredibly bad.
Yeah.
Tyler O'Connor, 18 for 38, 3 picks, sacked 4 times, and his picks were bad picks.
Yeah. I would say I would definitely echo that sentiment, especially that the last pick was. The game was pretty much in hand, but he had.
I don't know what he was looking at. I don't know if it's possible someone ran a bad route. They've got young receivers. It's possible, but I mean, BTN had that view from behind,
right?
And you're like, where are you going with the ball? I don't know. I don't know who that was on. I don't know. I didn't see any comments on specifically on that play, but.
Yeah. It was just a levels concept to the right side. He had Lyles at about 10 yards, I think it was, and then he had Corley. The play, it was a good play call. Corley was wide open over the top. You could see it, like you said, that view behind O'Connor, looking into the end zone, and there were 2 men down on top of Lyles.
Okay, yeah, that was his second pick you're talking about. That one
was that. The second one?
This one that was really bad too, though.
Yeah. Remind me about the other one.
It was on. It was the same. It was third quarter. It was second. The first two, I believe, were in the first half. It was kind of a deep ball down the middle. Looked like there was a deep slant or something.
Yeah.
I don't know who it was intended for. That's what was so weird. It was third quarter, and it was the same drive where he threw one to Lyles that was actually about to get picked off. So Lyles went to go tackle the guy. And the ball went through the defender's hands and into Lyles' chest, and he caught it as he was tackling the guy. He got away with that one, and then a few plays later, he threw a deep one down the middle. On Vine that I had no idea who he was throwing to. The one you're talking about was also really bad.
Yeah, the amount of picks he's gotten away with, like you said, that one should have been picked. He got away with a couple against Notre Dame. I mean, he's already thrown, I think, 5 interceptions this year.
I believe it's 5, yeah.
And I want to say I saw a stat the other day that no Michigan State quarterback had thrown more than 10 in a season since one of Cousins' first years, or maybe even before him. I don't think Cook ever threw 10 picks in a year. Now, I could be wrong, but
I'm looking this up right now.
But either way, he's regardless of the validity of that, he's well ahead of schedule on the picks, and that total could be even higher. So definitely some real concerns. And one of the things that, he was forced to throw the ball a lot because this Michigan State offense just simply could not run.
Right.
I think it's becoming very apparent very early in the season that if they cannot run and utilize play action effectively, Tyler O'Connor is not going to be – I don't think he's going to have games like this. This Wisconsin defense is actually legit. That's one thing I also –
Right. That's the thing. Wisconsin defense is really good defense.
But O'Connor is – you can't – he's not going to go out and win you a lot of games. They have to be able to run the ball, and they have to be able to have that deception, because we talked about it last week. He doesn't have the arm to push the ball down the field, and now we've seen enough out of him to question some of the decision-making as well. So, a lot to learn going forward and a lot for him to improve on. I don't think it's time to give up on him, but last week was certainly not encouraging.
Cousins threw 10 picks in both 2010 and 2011.
So maybe it was more than 10.
Cook threw 6 in 2013, 7 in 2014, 8 in 2015.
And so it must have been more than 10. So, I mean, it's been 5 years since at least 5 years since the Michigan State quarterback threw more than 10 picks, and O'Connor's halfway there through 3 games.
Hoyer had 9 in 2008, and that's as far back as this thing will go. So, I mean, not a good pace. That second pick, the levels, that was just a quintessential example of him not being able to read the defense. Corley was wide open, waving his arms, and assuming the read was low to high, he saw low and thought it was, and never got to the high read to see what was there. Okay, and so the whole thought with O'Connor coming in is senior guy, experienced, knows the offense. Be a game manager, and just limit the mistake. He doesn't have to make the big plays, but limit the mistakes. His mistakes are big, and they're very, very costly for that team. And if he can't hold on to the ball, they're going to have to try somebody else. Now, we can get to the quarterback backup in a minute. The other thing that I took away from the game was sort of along those lines, the turnovers. We're kind of in that now, the turnovers. That 66-yard fumble return touchdown.
Brutal.
LJ Scott's had some fumble issues last year. Coughed it up at a bad time. Returned, and that was just about the game. Really, at that point, but the way was not moving the ball, and
the shit is they actually had that was the very beginning of the second half. They had Wisconsin deep. They had the ball in great field position. I think that he had just run the ball for a decent gainer, maybe even completed a pass over the middle. I mean, it felt like they were only down a touchdown at that time, if I recall correctly. It was 13.
Yeah.
They had a chance to go down and score the ball and regain momentum, get the crowd back into the game, a sense of confidence. And that was just the most poorly timed. Like you said, LJ Scott's had some fumble troubles, and that was, if you're going to limit turnovers, this team has to game manage, be it in the run game or the passing game. You just can't have turnovers like that. This team does not have the offensive firepower nor the lockdown defense or complete defense, I should really say, to overcome such back-breaking plays. Not many teams do, but this Michigan State team certainly does not.
Right, and Scott averaged 4.4 yards a carry, had a couple bigger gains. 4.4 against that Wisconsin defense is not bad. That's all right. But that fumble was just so costly. Gerald Holmes had 1 carry for no yards. London 1 carry for 6 yards. And
Gerald Holmes was so bad.
I kind of remember. I remember thinking that. What exactly happened again?
I think it was a 3rd and 1, and it was in the midst of just no ball movement. 3rd and 1. And it was just a carry to the left. I don't know why they took Scott out, but basically that defensive end, I think it was Beagle that was over there. He crashed down super hard. The corner came way in. And instead of, obviously Holmes on that play was reading the pulling guard, and I think Price might have even come around on that as well. But there was this big motion from the right side to the left where he was running around. And instead of keeping his eyes up and reading the defense and realizing that all he had to do was pop that one to the outside and just shake and just run over the corner. I mean, he had to get a yard. Instead, he ran into I don't remember which guard. It might have been McGowan was in the game at that point, or it could have been Clemens. I don't remember which one was in, but he ran right into the pulling guard and got stuffed. That defense was all over him at that point. But all he had to do, there's just a complete and total lack of field vision, and that was just indicative of the entire day. If it could go wrong, it felt like it did. And yeah, it's frustrating with those running backs sometimes because you play the hot hand so much, and Gerald Holmes goes from getting all those carries against Notre Dame and looking really good to getting one carry.
Well, yeah, it partly because Scott was running okay. Scott was running pretty well, but then after that fumble touchback, you're realizing you're really gonna have to cut back on the running because your possessions are gonna be so limited with the way Wisconsin plays, with the way they were picking up their downs, and that you had to start try to passing the ball more. That play got them out of anything that they wanted to do.
Yes.
And offensively, I mean, so I saw Heather Dinich had the stat today. MSU is turning the ball over on 18% of their possessions. That's nearly 1 out of 5. That's not what you can't have. Like, if you're going to not be an explosive offense, you at least have to take care of the ball.
Right.
And I don't know if they can do either right now. And that, I think the turnovers, more than not moving the ball or more than struggling to maybe pass or run at times, is the turnovers. Those are just the killer plays. Those are the plays that they've avoided for years under D'Antonio. They've taken care of the ball, and this is a team that is not doing that through 3 games.
Yeah, and for those calling, you've seen, you hear the rumblings.
Okay, yeah, let's get into we can get into the quarterback here before we move to the defense.
I think that's a good transition there. You hear the rumblings about people calling for Tyler O'Connor. I think a lot of people are just spooked for a couple of reasons. One being you haven't really seen a quarterback. I mean, we've all been spoiled by Connor Cook, a legitimate NFL quarterback. He just never had a game where everything unraveled outside of playing Bama, which you can't really pin on him. Whereas you can kind of pin a decent amount of this one on Tyler O'Connor. And I think people just remember the Andrew Maxwell brief era so much that any subpar quarterback play kind of spooks them a bit. And so people, there is the small contingent calling to say, give it to Lewerke now. Now, I don't personally subscribe to that yet, but like you said, this offense cannot afford to turn that ball over like that if they're not going to be explosive. So if Tyler O'Connor keeps turning the ball over, if this keeps up, then D'Antonio is just simply not going to have much of a choice. I mean, at that point, you don't stick with the 5th-year senior when you can go to a redshirt freshman, and I just have to assume it would be Lewerke over Damian Terry, based on the fact that Terry hasn't seized that number 2 job, and he's been in this offense for 4 years now. So D'Antonio's already shown at pretty much every other position, it feels like, he's not afraid to pull red shirts, and that he's not afraid to go, to the freshman red shirt or true. And so I think if they don't even necessarily have to lose, but if he keeps turning the ball over and they don't come up with explosive plays, you don't want. I'm certainly not rooting for it, but it becomes a much more broachable subject if he keeps turning the ball over on 20% drives. I mean, those aren't all him. There are some fumbles in there, but I mean, that's 5 interceptions in 3 games. It's unacceptable. I think D'Antonio would say the same thing.
So back in 2012, I mean, looking back now, people can say you should have done Cook, yada yada. I don't know. I don't know if Cook. I mean, I know Cook ended up leading that drive down to win the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl, but I can't say I disagree with what they tried at the time.
No, I don't either.
But
I think it's
what I had said then was to speed up the offense a little bit because it was that offense never got in any rhythm. They'd run a play, it'd be 30 seconds before they run another play, and they could never get in a rhythm. And at the time I said the defense is really good. You can lean on it.
Right.
Back in 2012. just try to so they're not thinking as much. There was so much time between plays, and they did it. And then this year, I started to kind of say the same thing, and they did a little bit against Notre Dame, and it worked. And just to, I'm not saying turn into Baylor and run up and down the field, but just to speed things up, to kind of feel like you're in a rhythm. It always just feels like play, and then like a long break. And
I
play,
agree.
and then a long break. Take away the thinking. And just have guys react. I mean, I'm not a coach, obviously. Dave Warner does a good job of putting guys, I think, in position to do well. And he wasn't the coach on the 2012 offense, I don't believe. But I believe MSU's. Let me see where they are in terms. Well, I guess they've only played 3 games, but in terms of total plays, like I feel like they need to get into more of a rhythm. So they've run. Go ahead.
I was just going to completely agree with you. And to go back to your point against Notre Dame,
they're at 68 plays a game, which is very slow.
Yeah, and if you go back to that against Notre Dame, like you alluded to, that was at the end of the first half, and that late touchdown drive after they had, which ended in that R.J. Shelton touchdown run, is the drive you're talking about. And I think it's pretty obvious that Tyler O'Connor right now is struggling to read defenses, like you said on that second pick. He was low to high, and he never got to high. I think if you give him some quicker, if you give him some quicker hits, some slants, just some basic stuff, and like you said, get that offense moving, maybe limit the amount of subs the defense is able to make, grind them down a little bit. You can still run the ball when you go up tempo. Like you said, it doesn't have to be sprinting to the line. Definitely does not have to be that. Michigan State's never going to be that. But I'm with you. Take some of the complexity out of things and just let him go out and play. You can tell he's overthinking things and not able to make the right progression. So I'm definitely with you there. I think that would be wise. It's going to be interesting. I don't know how much they will this week. Indiana runs the ball well, and we'll get to them obviously, but I don't know if this is necessarily the week they want to do it, just because Indiana already plays up tempo, and if Michigan State's not going to score, you don't want to only take 45 seconds off the clock and then give it right back to Indiana. But I do agree with you. I think a little more up tempo from time to time, at least mixing it in, would be very smart.
Right, and I feel like when the offense is struggling, I feel like they need more plays, not fewer, not necessarily short. I mean, shortening the game to try to win that one game, but long term, if you're trying to get the offense into something, I feel like just moving a little bit faster might be. That's what I said in 2012, and people's called for Connor Cook, and Connor Cook ended up becoming an NFL player. So maybe I'm wrong. But okay, so with these backup quarterbacks, Damian Terry is apparently hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
We still don't know if he can pass the ball at all, other than a couple of passes either against Nebraska last year. So Lewerke comes in, and people seem to be not high, but inching toward him. But I'm quick to point out his first throw was terrible.
A bad pick.
Got a very bad pick, underthrown, off target, taken off because of pass interference. He drives them down. They don't score. They run out of time. But remember, this is at the end of the game. Wisconsin is in prevent. They do not give a shit. Game's over. I will say Lewerke, based on eye test, appears to have a much stronger arm than O'Connor.
Right.
Partly because O'Connor, I think, has a very weak arm.
Yes.
Is Lewerke the answer? I don't think so. D'Antonio seemed to be pretty critical of him. I'm imagining he didn't grade out pretty well, despite any feeling. So I don't know if going any sort of backup quarterback right anytime soon is the right way to go. I don't think they stuck with Maxwell did not turn the ball over like O'Connor is. I think if O'Connor keeps throwing these picks, he's more likely to get pulled than if he was just not
right
in the offense. If he's turning the ball over, you got to make a change there.
You don't have a choice. Well, O'Connor's going to make this choice for D'Antonio. I think it really, at the end of the day, it's up to him and how he plays. If he plays well, then they're not going to bench him. But if he keeps turning the ball over, then he's not going to have a choice. O'Connor does have a pretty decent schedule of very winnable games. I mean, that's the good news, I think, for this offense is that you've got Indiana this week, then BYU, who I don't know a whole lot about, frankly, this year. Northwestern's already lost a couple bad games, and that's the week after, and that's homecoming, and then it's Maryland on the road. That's a night game, so that could always be a trap game, especially after what we saw last year. Who knows what could happen? But you like to think – I think at the end of the day, the unknown is always undefeated. I mean, if you remember years ago when Damian Terry was a true freshman, people were calling for him. That same Maxwell year. I don't believe that has to happen until O'Connor forces D'Antonio's hand. I don't believe that's the right way to go. To overreact as bad as he looked, to overreact to one game against what could be a nationally top defense. I mean, Wisconsin has now shut down LSU, who, say what you want about their quarterback situation, but they've shut down them and Michigan State. If they go in and do what they can do against Michigan, people are going to have to give them the credit they deserve. It could just at the end of the day be another bad quarterback performance of what could be many against Wisconsin. So I think people need to take a step back, let O'Connor play, and if he plays poorly, D'Antonio is going to have to move on from him. It's pretty black and white, I think, at this point.
Yeah, so we'll see how things go against Indiana. It was in 2012 when Andrew Maxwell had perhaps his best performance against Indiana when he led that second half comeback in the 31-27 win, and he thought, okay, maybe the offense figured some stuff out. They're going to go forward, and then they just fell off again and didn't go anywhere. So other side of the ball now, MSU defense. It seemed there was a drive in the first half when Wisconsin figured out, let's pass the ball more. We can pass on these guys. And they started to, because they did not run the ball well. MSU's run defense remained strong. They held a good rushing offense, held Corey Clement to 2.3 yards per carry. Generally held the run game in check. The problem was Hornibrook, quarterback, had a pretty good game, 16 for 26 overall, pick and a TD. But the third downs, Wisconsin went 7 for 16, but it was higher than that at halftime and early when they had taken the lead. It kind of tailed off toward the end of the game when they had the big lead. But Hornibrook was hitting big third down throw after big third down throw. He was making the plays, and MSU was not getting very much pressure on him. Oh, we did have the fumble too on a sack.
Yeah, Raekwon Williams.
Yes, but he hit big throws on third down, and he hit some. And I was very impressed with his poise there. And MSU's blitzes were not getting through against Notre Dame. I said sitting back in coverage was pointless because they can't cover anyway. They need to blitz more. Well, they did blitz more against Wisconsin, and the blitz didn't get there. So kind of a lose-lose there. If you can't get pressure on the quarterback, this passing defense is going to be eaten alive. But the run defense did do pretty well.
Yeah, I think on the first two downs of almost every drive, they did a good job of stuffing the run. And if you come into a game against Wisconsin and someone tells you you're going to hold their best running back, who's one of the better running backs in the conference, even though he's not healthy right now, you're going to hold him to under 60 yards on 20-something carries, and put them into multiple long third and fourth downs. You're going to think that you have a pretty good shot at winning that game, but Wisconsin threw that tip, turned that entire notion right on its head. Hornibrook really, really impressed me. Not only was he making throws in big moments, but he was dropping some dimes. I mean, just dropping in, because not all of the coverage. He had a couple really.
There were a couple really good throws.
Couple really good throws. I mean, he had a couple. I mean, I know he had one third down conversion on that. I think it was a 16-play drive in the first half, the first time they scored, where he had, Jazz Peavy shook Jalen Watts-Jackson in the slot and was wide open, and they had a couple others that were not well covered. But he made some really impressive throws. I think Wisconsin might have a real quarterback on their hands, and there's no way there's no way that any Spartan fan, analyst, anybody could have possibly seen that coming. With what we knew about him, which was so little, but he played really well, and they have some good receivers. That tight end Fumagalli ended up playing. They've got a good tight end. But the pass defense, it was just so disappointing, like you said, to see it happen on those third and fourth, those critical downs where Michigan State historically has been so good. They got torn up, and the pass rush, if it does not improve, it's hard to imagine that changing a whole lot. And you have to think against teams like Indiana, they're going to come out and they're going to throw the ball as much as they can because they know Michigan State can't get after the quarterback.
I'm very curious to see how Indiana will play it because they're about 50-50 running passing this year.
Right. That's true, but I mean, I don't think Kevin Wilson would ever shy away from throwing the ball 50 times if he had to.
And he knows screen passes long kill this MSU defense.
Yeah, always have. Always have. Dating all the way back to 2007, the induction of the Narduzzi defense. The screen passes are always brutal. And so I'm sure they'll do that. They've got 3 pretty talented receivers. You got to think that they're going to try to exploit MSU that way. But if the pass rush just has to get better. And you saw the shirts came off of Josh King and Austin Roberts this week.
That tells me they do not feel good about that personnel, which was already a question coming in.
Right. I mean, you haven't seen a ton. I mean, I haven't seen much to speak of about Gabe Sherrod. I thought Cooper flashed a little bit. I think we have to like what you've seen from Raequan Williams so far. But all in all, that unit is young. I think there's a ton of talent, but it's early in a lot of their freshman or redshirt freshman seasons. It's obvious that these, Evan Jones is not the answer. I haven't seen much from Robert Bowers. So I think it's about time. Kevin Williams is the rotation player and not the starter that I think a lot of people were hoping to see. And Malik McDowell can only do so much. So, and now that they're down Reschke and Bulla, at least for this
right,
year,
that's what
sounds like Reschke for a long time. It's going to be it's definitely going to be a challenge for them. Again, I mean, it's a Wisconsin offensive line at the same time, so you've got to think.
That's right. That's the other thing. Right. They're not going to face many offensive lines like that.
I don't think they're going to play many teams as good as Wisconsin, frankly. I mean,
they still got Michigan, Ohio State on the schedule. I think are pretty good.
Yeah. Oh no, I don't mean to write them off, but between those two, I mean, those are 2 of the remaining 9 games or whatever it is.
Yeah. At the end of this, let's as we really get into, as we kind of know what the team is, we'll get at the end season projections and what you think and if things are different.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Do you want to do that now or do you want to just wait a little bit?
Well, let's do it now after the Indiana pick.
Oh yeah, okay.
So yeah, the linebackers, that was the one spot they could afford to take a hit.
True.
But man, that's a big hit.
Those are the
Reschke for possibly the year, and Riley Bull is already out. That's a real big hit. Now Ed Davis is back, but we don't know what Ed Davis is back. That's
right.
Andrew Dowell is going to have to step up in a big, big way. Shane Jones in a big way.
I thought Shane Jones played really well on the first.
He's played pretty well this year.
But he can't play on third down. He's not a third down. He's not a 3-down linebacker.
Right.
He's a 2-down linebacker. He's not going to do well in coverage. So it's going to be interesting to see who comes in and subs in the middle for him. Is that Byron Bulla? Because I don't think Fry or Dowell.
It's probably
Byron
Bulla, yeah.
So, I mean, I think I tweeted this last week, but I think Michigan State is legally obligated to have a Bulla play significant minutes for them. So that's probably fitting.
And I believe they said Grayson Miller had been repping there. That's a guy who can obviously help out in pass coverage moving from safety. So it'll be interesting to see the size of the linebacking court because Chris Fry's not the biggest. They already weren't the biggest group. And
Dowell's under 220, and Fry can't be more than 230 tops.
Yeah, he's listed at 6'2", 227. I mean, they were already a pretty small group. Ed Davis is on the bigger side, 237. But yeah, so
that's a big challenge.
And for Indiana special teams, interesting. Geiger hit 2 field goals, which was a positive sign for MSU. Probably the lone positive that happened in their butt. And there's Hartbarger losing control. Has trouble with the snap and drops it. And I know every MSU fan was they were not happy, but I guarantee they breathed a sigh of relief that Hartbarger got back on the ball and that it was not returned for a short little touchdown there.
Yeah. That could have been the source of some pretty vines and tweets and all sorts of social media stuff. So I think you're right. I know I took a big deep breath when that happened, but I mean the game was over at that point.
Right. That was the final nail in the coffin. And another special teams problem. Kevin Cronin has 3 out-of-bounds kickoffs in 3 games.
Yeah,
that is a problem. That is a big problem.
That's a big problem. This team can't afford to give away field position. No. I think it's pretty obvious in every aspect. I mean, I thought for as little as Wisconsin punted, I thought the punt returners did a decent job of actually fielding the ball this week. But it's just these are the little things. It's really been. It was. I know I said it earlier, but everything that could have gone wrong in this game went wrong. But this team is. It's the mistakes they're making, even in Furman. There were penalties then. They were just dumb decisions, and it's the little stuff that D'Antonio teams usually have wrapped up so airtight that are slipping through the cracks. And they're making this team cannot afford to not be a very disciplined, very smart, responsible team. And they have not. They in any of the games really have not played that way so far. So hopefully they got a good, I mean, I like to think D'Antonio's really hammered that home to them this week in practice and everything, and hopefully they can pull things together.
This is a situation where to get all intangible, where you kind of question the leadership, or you got to see where the leadership is. Your captains, Tyler O'Connor, not playing well. Demetrius Cox, not playing well. Riley Bulla, injured. So who are going to be the people who take control on the team and get it turned around and with the dumb mistakes? I mean, that's where it's got to start. You have to fix it.
Because Izzo always says about the basketball program where he says he wants a player coach team over a coach team. And I think that kind of applies in a way to this year's team. I mean, and Malik McDowell, I don't think he has never come out and said that he's not the vocal leader, he's not the locker room type of guy. He just leads by example. So
he's not Shalik Calhoun in that aspect. And it's Connor Kirk wasn't the captain last year, but think about the captains on the team: Jack Allen, Shalik Calhoun, and who was the other one?
It was oh my gosh!
I'm having a Rick Perry oops moment here. It was Darian Harris. Yeah, compare that to what you think you've seen out of the leadership so far here, and the people who are gonna take control when things are getting out of control.
Yeah, it's just we knew this was going to be a youth movement type of year in a lot of different ways, a lot of new faces, and it's showing through. There's a bit of a leadership vacuum, and I think moving forward, even a guy like John Reschke, it's unfortunate that he got hurt because he was playing really, really well. And, he was the type of guy who was playing himself into a leadership role and being a guy that people look up to. It's going to be interesting. I think whoever makes the big plays moving forward will be that guy.
Is someone singing over there?
Yeah, somebody is singing over there. One of my roommates is singing on his way out the door.
Well,
beautiful voice, doesn't he?
Joe Toohey had Blake O'Neill as his roommate, so you've got a singer in you. that works out. So, okay, Austin, you do the previews.
Yeah.
Tell us about Indiana.
Well, I think it's not the same type of Indiana. When you think of Indiana, you think of that pass-heavy, high-octane, go type offense, and I don't think that necessarily the pace has changed as much. But this, like you alluded to it earlier, it's a 50-50 run type team. They kind of skewed that way when Tevin Coleman was there. And then last year again with Jordan Howard, and this year it's Divine Redding. He's got 60-something carries for a decent amount of yardage so far. Um, he's got 300 yards. They have a backup in Mike Majette who has 120 yards. So they're going to try to run the ball. But at the same time, their quarterback, Richard Legault, who is a JUCO transfer, I'm not sure exactly from where, he's thrown the ball over 100 times already in 3 games. But he does turn the ball over a lot, 5 picks.
Well, all 5 in one game, right?
Right, all 5 last week against Wake Forest. So Wake Forest, usually has a pretty decent defense, but it's still Wake Forest at the end of the day.
Indiana,
you like to think Michigan State can capitalize and get them to turn the ball over a bit. And I think they're going to have to, because this Indiana team is going to score. They've got 3 real good running backs wide receivers, and Nick Westbrook, Ricky Jones, and Mitchell Page. Westbrook already has over 330 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns, averaging 110 yards a game. I think most fans will remember last year that the game against Indiana was very close until the fourth quarter.
Until the rain came for Indiana and then stopped when MSU got the ball.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was a crazy. It was like a freaking hurricane, it looked like. And then MSU got the ball back, and then it was done like that.
And I was at that game.
Oh, really?
It felt like divine intervention. But yeah, it's Michigan State's going to have to try to get Legault to turn the ball over, and that's going to be tough without a pass rush. So you're going to have to not necessarily count on him to make mistakes, but you have to capitalize when he makes those 50-50 throws. And I think coming off a week against Wake Forest that had to shake his confidence a bit, you would think. I mean, a 5-interception game can't exactly be a confidence boost. You got to be ready for those. You got to be ready to make plays. This defense has done a decent job of it so far, I guess, but not a ton of turnovers to this point. But you're going to have to make your way in that regard this week. Defensively, for them, their all-star guy is Tigray Scales, the linebacker. He leads the team in tackles with 22. He's also got 4.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and a pick already this year, and a pass breakup and a forced fumble. So this guy is all over the place. And I know that they play kind of a funky defense. It's not really a traditional 4-3. So you'll see, I believe it's more of like a 4-2-5 with kind of like the bandit rover, third safety type of guy. And so you're going to have an opportunity with one less man in the box, or at least a smaller player down there, to run the ball offensively. Again, I think you just have to get back to establishing your identity. You got to hand the ball to Gerald Holmes and LJ Scott, at least 20 times a game for Scott, probably 10 so carries for Holmes, maybe even more than that. You got to sprinkle in some Andre London, some RJ Shelton. Get back to being yourself. You should be able to not dominate, but you should be able to hold your own on the ground in this game. Shorten it up a little bit. I know we talked about speeding the offense up, but really they got to get back to being who they are. It's not a high-flying, high-octane offense. I think start off running the ball. They should be able to do it against the IU team. I think the offensive line will have a better day against, a non-Wisconsin defense. And so I would say that's probably the best place for Michigan State to start. And I'm not a coach. I'm not up there calling the plays, but I imagine Dave Warner is probably thinking. I hope Dave Warner is thinking similar things. Get Tyler O'Connor into that rhythm. Buy him some extra time with that running game. So, it's a lot of information at one point, but it's a decent team. It's under the lights. It's on the road. Michigan State's not going to get a free pass, even though it's Indiana. Right,
and well, along those lines, I think a key will be for MSU to not fall behind, two scores early. If Indiana scores a touchdown, MSU punts, Indiana gets a touchdown. Does MSU panic and go into pass mode, or do they try to stick with the running game? And they're going to have to try to stick to what they can do, because I don't think you can lean on Tyler O'Connor to win your game.
Tyler O'Connor's not going to be able to go out there and win you a ton of games all on his own. And I don't think you want to put him in that situation. They certainly didn't last week, but their hand was forced. You'd like to think that this defense can slow down the running game and then make plays when Legault throws those 50-50 balls, but they're going to have their hands full. I mean, there's no way around it. Darian Hicks is going to be challenged by some of these receivers in the slot, Tyson Smith and Deontay Copeland too. The safeties have not been good in coverage so far. They've been good against the run, but that secondary is going to be challenged. So you got to hope that maybe Ed Davis is a little healthier and he can spark the pass rush. But something's got to change defensively for Michigan State to have this be a healthy win. I still think they should win. This is a game they should win. It's
a game that worth noting that Bill Connolly's advanced stats, I believe, have Purdue or Indiana as about 56% favorite. So the advanced stats are not high. They're really, really down on MSU's offense.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly.
No, and I mean, I don't think anyone would expect them to be very high on this offense, but the potential is there. It's just all about game plan and execution. So if they can run the ball, they should be in fine shape. If they can slow down the passing attack of Indiana, they should be okay. But they're going into what, I mean, you never describe Bloomington as a hostile football environment, but if there's ever a time for it, it's at night against a big name opponent. So they're not going to get any free passes. They should still win, but this will definitely be a challenge. It's definitely not a giveaway.
No, and of the games remaining, you could make the case that it might be the third hardest game left on the schedule behind Michigan, Ohio State.
Yeah, considering that Penn State.
Considering the situation, considering
yeah, I would not disagree with that.
And, I think the weakness of this MSU team.
And Penn State could be on a new coach at that point if things don't turn around for James Franklin. So I tend to agree with you on that. So definitely a challenge. I like to think they're up to it, but I wouldn't get too comfortable if I was a Spartan fan. It's going to be, you're going to want to take down a couple beers probably for this one.
Yeah, it's
21. Of course,
I'm thinking a close one. So what's your score prediction?
Oh, I hadn't even really come up with one as of yet, but
I'll go first if you're not ready. Yeah. I'll go MSU 28-27. With it coming right down to the end. Yeah,
I'm gonna say 31-28. I think it's gonna be a close one. But if Legao doesn't throw as many of those, like I said, the questionable throws, and Michigan State can't make those plays defensively, it's going to be a real close one.
Yeah. Again, how the game starts off, I think, will be really important. They can't let MSU can't fall behind and have to pass their way back into it. So, all right. So I just mentioned that Indiana might be the third hardest game on the schedule. I don't know if you have the schedule in front of you.
Yep, I got it up.
But it goes like this for people listening. At Indiana, home against BYU, home against Northwestern, at Maryland, home against Michigan, at Illinois, home against Rutgers, home against Ohio State, at Penn State. Now, at the beginning of the year, I said 10-2, but I thought they would beat Wisconsin and lose to Notre Dame, so I guess this is where I had them anyway. Dom had them at 12-0. We can finally say that is not happening after what happened a week ago. And his hopes that the defense would be the defensive backfield would be on the similar talent level as 2013 have not come to happen.
Sorry, Dom. Sorry,
so buddy. If we're both picking a win over Indiana here, that's 3-1. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games left. What is your prediction for final record and maybe how the rest of it turns out?
It's definitely worth noting here that we still are 3 to 4 games into the season. So this team can really evolve in a lot of ways, but the obvious flaws, I think, hopefully will get patched up, but are probably going to exist most of the season in some way, shape, or form. I hate myself for saying it, but it's hard to see them standing up to what we've seen so far from definitely from Ohio State. I had that penned in as a loss at the beginning of the season, and I stand by it now. Then again, I had the same thing last year, so who knows? But it's hard to see them, beating Ohio State or Michigan. I certainly wouldn't pick them in either game right now. But the rest of the games, they should still. I mean, none of these teams are powerhouses. I still think this is a 9-3 team. They should win this week. I don't see. I mean, look at some of these teams. You're talking Maryland, Illinois, Rutgers. Those are probably the three outside of Purdue. Three of the four.
Maryland will be interesting because
Maryland will be interesting.
3-0 this year, but we don't really know how good that 3-0 is.
Right, and I think that's definitely a good point. We're still so early in the season. You see it every year with some teams. They start off super hot, and eventually halfway through the season they peter out, or some of the worst teams get a lot better. But if this Michigan State team should still go 9-3, in my opinion. I could see with the lack of a bye week, I could see them going 8-4. I could see certain positions that look like weaknesses now turning into, maybe not strengths, but not necessarily weaknesses down the line. So, and then stealing a game somewhere and going 10-2 still. So, I'm going to stick with 9-3. I think I said 10-2 coming into the year, but last week opened up a lot of question marks about how they can perform against the truly good teams. And so, I still think 9-3. I still think 9-3 at this point. That's what I would say. That's pretty. That's my pick for now.
I'm gonna go 8-4.
Yeah.
I don't think right now they match up with Michigan or Ohio State, and then there will be one more. Maybe it's Indiana. Maybe it's Penn State. Maybe it's Maryland. I think there'll be one more in there, and they finish at 8-4. But a week ago, I definitely wouldn't have said that. So that's these things have really changed from week to week as we get a bigger sample size of how to judge this MSU team. So it keeps changing.
Right, from week 1 to week 2 to week 3 to week 4, it's been a different picture every time. So it's 8-4 sounds responsible. I'm trying to be responsible but optimistic at the same time. I like to think they'll figure some things out, but I could absolutely see them going. I think 8-4 is probably worst case scenario. Honestly, I can't. Just based on the talent.
I mean, based on the last game, I guess I wouldn't say 7-5's out of the. I don't think they'll miss a bowl game. I don't. But but all of a sudden, games like Indiana, Penn State, these games that I think we all assumed were wins, all of a sudden maybe are closer to 50-50, and I think everything kind of comes down a notch. So
this week will answer a lot of questions. I really do think
I can agree with that.
Yeah. So. Hey man, a long time ago, I grew up a Michigan State diehard, and it's every once in a while you have to take that step back and be like, if I'm gonna, a 9-win season used to be, everything, but now we're happy with it. So all in all, if you take that super silver lining approach, things could be worse.
Well, sure, and I'm. It's all relative, and Michigan's I think got a pretty good team this year, and MSU fans won't like that. But who knows? Things keep changing every week. They could keep changing again. Anything else you wanted to hit on before we wrap up here?
An unfortunate note, but I think we kind of have to mention just I would put my thoughts and prayers out there for Mylan Hicks's family and the tragedy that they have had to deal with. That's just it's unfortunate what the Michigan State program between Mike Sadler and now Mylan Hicks. It's such a tragedy of what's happened to them. So just thoughts and prayers with every one of the people that was, a teammate of his, a family member of his. I just want to put my thoughts and prayers out there for him as a member of Spartan Nation. Yeah,
I believe MSU is going to honor him with, a helmet sticker and cleats and socks. I think they're wearing black cleats and black socks for him. I guess I wouldn't be surprised if they do more. I think I saw some former players saying they wanted to see as much, love for him as Sadler, because based on a lot of tweets I've seen from the guys, he played he was a big part of that, even if he wasn't necessarily a starter all the time, and just incredibly sad. Just got reportedly shot at a club in Calgary. He was up in the CFL, signed to the practice squad there. Just very
Terrible.
very
So just
sad.
thoughts and prayers with his family. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that and make sure everybody knows that our thoughts as Spartan Nation are with them.
And one last thing, Keith Appling today, he waived his right to preliminary examination. They'll have a pretrial in October related to the recent gun charges against him.
Man.
I talked about this in the past with Joe on the podcast. Just very sad to see. He's been arrested several times this year for various things, and just hate to see when guys don't have things together. So
yeah, hopefully he can turn things around here. But again, just want to make sure that everybody knows we support the two of them as a community for sure.
Yeah, not a finishing this podcast on a down note, but it was a pretty down. It's been a down week, I think, for MSU a bit, and that'll be a challenge going to Indiana. So it's a night game I assume it's on BTN.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But hey,
8:00.
Put the positive vibes out there for this week. Hopefully our Spartans come out, get a W, and kind of get things, let us all take a little bit of a deep breath, and hopefully all the thoughts going forward, at least in this season, are not so tough, and we can feel a little bit better about some of those 50-50 games moving forward.
So thanks, guys, for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, follow along on Twitter, and for Austin, this is Chris, and we will talk to you guys next week. See you.
Go Green.